Within our souls, we all possess a dream which lay dormant until intrigue strikes its match and sets the torch we carry ablaze, leading us down the path of the unknown towards our dreams. As coaches who are former high-performance athletes, our personal experiences have shown us that a coach, parent, or even a fellow athlete have the potential to either illuminate or extinguish the dreams of young athletes. Nothing is lost from the candle which lights another. We are here to share our stories and our passion to illuminate the champion within, empowering coaches, parents, and athletes to keep the flame of their dreams burning eternally. You are listening to Illuminating Champions with Michal and Ashley Anton. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Illuminating Champions. For our first-time listeners, my name is Ashley, and I'm here today with my husband, Michal.
Hey, how are you guys?
We also have a special guest interviewing us. He is better known as the brand artist, but his actual name is Mark Patterson.
Hi, Mark.
Welcome, Mark.
Hello.
So today's episode is titled Red Flags for Readiness. And it's all about knowing when an athlete is fully prepared to take on more. Athletes sometimes are physically ready, but not mentally ready. Sometimes it's the vice versa. They're mentally ready, wanting to do more, but they're physically just not quite there yet. So in today's episode, Mark is going to be asking us some questions that will help both parents and coaches better understand when an athlete is fully ready to take their training to the next step. So go ahead, Mark.
Well, it's important to realize that a coach does so much. I mean, I'm amazed at after working with you, the depth of what coaching really is, because you have to deal with the physical and emotional. And since your athletes are very young, their bodies are still, the bones are being formed and their muscles are growing. So let's talk about that first thing, not just the idea of teaching them how to do a move or a trick or whatever, but how can you tell when it's healthy for them to do something, the physical part of learning how to do something?
It's good to start with the physical because that's normally a little bit more apparent to see than the mental. So that's always the best place to begin.
Mental comes a little bit later.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So physically, you want to be seeing the athlete being able to execute whatever skills they're working on with good form, meaning they can do them with their arms straight and their legs straight, and they look really like they're doing them with ease. They're able to hold their body exactly the way that they want to. They're able to control their movement. And this is always a good sign that they have mastered something physically, where they can continue doing it repetitively, the same consistent way, the right way.
Yeah, look, it's simple. Let's say out of 10 repetition on one trick or a routine, a whole routine, out of 10, you execute very good, pretty good, 7 or 6, understand? But in a very safe way. That's a sign that you can look at and be like, okay, she or he is ready to start something a little bit harder,
Right. Yeah.
You cannot take someone to a competition and they have to do, for example, like a little girl, she's 6 years old, competing level 3, she has a round handspring on floor. And she never did it by herself. You have to spot her on the floor. It's kind of not fair for her to get a spot where like she does like out of 10 round handspring by herself, she does like 9 on her head, and 1 by some miracle she straight her arms a little bit and doesn't do a head spring, like bounce off her head.
Mm-hmm.
But those are things you look at it, and it's good for them to have more safe executions than falling and mistakes,
Right. And you
Makes
normally,
sense what I'm explaining?
yeah, it makes sense. And normally with something like a runoff back handspring that he's describing, so for viewers who are non-gymnastics literate, a round off is like a cartwheel and you shut your feet together at the end. And a back handspring, you can think of like a backflip, but you put your hands on the floor before your feet land. So it's very important in doing something like this, because many athletes start in gymnastics in level 2 or 3. Those are the beginner levels. that they have a good foundation of flexibility and strength. So you always have skills that are progressive. Like, let's say, for example, the child should be able to do a very good bridge where they're able to lay down on the floor and bend their arms and bend their legs, and they push their belly button up to the ceiling and lift their head off the floor. So they should be able to do this with ease and hold it. They should be able to maintain their arm strength and their shoulder flexibility enough to stay off the ground for at least 10 seconds repetitively, not just one time per practice. And then, okay, she can do this, then we can start the next step. And then she can do bridge and she can kick her legs over her head. And it is a step-by-step learning process, just like in school. But you can't rush it. You have to, as much as you want everybody to advance quickly, they really have to be ready, because if you just jump from one place to the next, that's when injuries can happen, or then you get bad habits, because a lot of times the child is trying to alleviate like whatever problem they're having. Like, let's say their shoulders aren't flexible enough, and then they mask it by figuring out very intelligently, like, okay, if I kick my feet over too fast, I can overcompensate the problem of my shoulders not being flexible. So they actually end up executing the skill wrong, but they can do it because they're going around whatever their problem is. So this is really important for coaches to look at, and even for parents. If a coach is saying, I really need her to focus on this foundational part. I need her, a lot of times in the very beginning, it is flexibility. So I need her to stretch more. I need her to do more splits. I need her, to strengthen her body more. Then the parent has to really, really take that into consideration and just encourage the child. When you go to practice, make sure you really focus on this part. And that's it's always a tedious part. It's not the most fun part of practicing gymnastics. And that's in any sport, whatever the very tedious foundation is. It's not normally the most exciting part, but it is the most vital part.
I think I will stop you a second. But you see how things connect? In every other episode, we talk about the relation between parent and the coach. You see what she said? When the coach tells the athlete or the parent, like, oh, she has to work on this, the parent has to reiterate it to the young girl or boy at home, like, okay, when we go back to practice, look, do this. You see, it's a very personal sport, gymnastics, and when you coach, it's very important that that relation between the coach and the parent is very honest and very good, because that's how the athlete gets better.
So as
the parent can see too with their eyes. Like, for example, in my gym, I let the parents watch. I have like an open lobby area, and I like it that way. I don't like when the parent cannot watch the practice. Like, I really want the parents to watch, because that helps me. Like, in my opinion, like, I grew up, like, for example, my parents never come to see me training gymnastics or competing gymnastics. It was just how it was. They put you in a room, they close the door, it's concrete walls, we barely have windows. And in America, when they do the same thing, parents are not allowed, especially at the competitive level, the parents are not allowed to sit to watch practice. And I think it's wrong, because the parent is what helps you guide that child better. Like, if the parent watch the practice and then I go there and I don't know, maybe the child just did a mistake in that moment and the parent is there and I say, okay, you see, that's what I was talking about. Yeah. I always use that moment to help the parent understand what I'm asking. Understand? When the child fell off the beam and I said, you see, she fell off the beam, it's not because she's not capable to execute the technique correct, it's because she's not paying attention. You see how she was talking with that girl over there, right? And then the parent can see it. It's like, oh, yes. And then they know that what you tell them, it's honest. Make sense?
Yeah, because they're there seeing it with their own eyes. It helps you be on the same page.
So as a coach, you have to know each athlete's physical capability and the individual flaws or areas to work on, and you work with the athlete and the parents to point that out, so you can, as the last week's episode, the triangle, you can be a better triangle to support the child. Yeah. So that's really good.
Right. And you really have to look at each child like an individual. Like I said before,
Not
that
like,
the
as an
skills
individual.
as an individual, excuse me. So, like I said before, the skills do come in a progression, but not everybody follows the same exact path. You need to look at each child and see what comes easily to them and where they struggle. And wherever they struggle, that's what you always have to focus on enhancing to make better. And you just help them along in different ways. Maybe somebody does need to do a little bit of a different exercise to become stronger or more flexible than a different gymnast does. Maybe somebody's naturally strong, so you progress their strength a little bit faster and they are able to take on tricks a little bit faster. And when parents are watching from outside, that's why it's always so important to look at your child and see how they are personally progressing without comparing. You want to compare in the sense that it's positive, like Michal always says, and notice, okay, this person is ahead, this person does this well, because you need to identify what someone does well.
Yes, and
but
why they do well.
Right. While you're doing that, you also have to remember to watch your own child and see what they're performing better that the coach asked them to, because maybe they really do struggle with a certain area. So then when you're looking, from a wide angle lens, you're just watching your child struggle and this child learn quickly. Whereas your child, maybe they got down, an inch farther in their split, and that was really, really hard for them to accomplish, or they pulled their nose all the way to the bar instead of being able to not bend their arms on a pull-up at all. You really have to help them identify those moments also, because it's hard for the child to be the one that's struggling with something, because they do notice, even though they're having fun, they know right away when they can't get something easily that somebody else can get easily. And then it's really, really important for the coach and for the parent to remind them that they're doing a great job and point out whatever it is that they did better, so that it becomes a positive learning experience and something to celebrate, rather than just being negative, like, you still didn't do this, you still can't pull your chin over the bar, you still can't do a split. You can't look at it like that.
That's a bad comparison. See, when you said about comparing in the past, and we talk about that, and I told you should compare, but positively, that's a negative comparison, because, and parents, don't get mad at me, parents, they have the tendency to do that a lot by trying to actually help the child, because they're like, oh, look, I'm showing them that kid can do it and they cannot, and they should do it too. But it's the wrong way to explain it. You could say it the way, like I told you before, like, look, she does that, but she does, I don't know, she does conditioning correct. I watch her doing her conditioning, and she does all these squat jumps or leg slaps. Or what do you think? If you will do that, you will get stronger in order for you to do the round handspring with straight legs, for example. Understand? Like, you try to give those correction with a positive cover, kind of, right? Because, like I told you, corrections are a negativity, right? When you try to help someone and you give them a correction, no matter in what it is, you point out something that they struggle with and they are not good at it and they do it bad. That's how correction starts, right? You tell someone how bad they do it.
Sure.
And then you give them the things to correct, right? Like, if in gymnastics you bend your legs in a round off handspring, I'm going to tell you keep your legs straight, right? I point out what you did bad and I tell you what to do correct, but the outcome of the correction is positive, because if you make that correction, you're going to get better. And that's how parents have to think too when they talk to the child. They have to give a correction, but in a positive way,
right?
Because they already feel bad, like Ashley just said. They feel bad. They are competitive. They go to the gym. They want to train. They want to be good. And then when they struggle, they know first that they struggle.
Right.
Even though they don't show it. Sometimes we have kids that are very, how to say it, they are very good at covering, because they are, how to say it, they are not confident and they play funny. Like, they play like, oh, look at me, I'm goofy. You know what I mean? Like, I laugh at everything, doesn't bother, nothing bothers me.
They try to look unfazed.
Yes. But everything bothers them because they want to be good. And you have to look at that. It's, it's even for the coach that can fool you a little bit, because you look
Yeah.
at someone who's like, oh, she's just fine. She fell off the beam 3 times. She's okay. She come in last place. She doesn't care. No, look at her a little bit more. Pay more attention, because she cares a lot. That athlete that looks like they don't care are most of the time the ones that care a lot, but they are afraid to show it emotionally, because it's a painful emotion to have, to not feel good enough the way you want to be.
That's very true. And you have to be like very honest and open to say, I can't get this. Or, I've tried 1,000 times and it still didn't come out right. And that's a difficult thing to share with somebody, to express that, especially as a child. So it is really, really true what you just said. A lot of children either say nothing and they're quiet, or they act silly and pretend like they don't care that they didn't get it yet. But they
Well,
do really care.
that's a good segue into the next idea is, once you figure out the physicality of their performance and how their body is growing and needs to be worked on, this or that, strength or flexibility. But you just touched on the next level is the emotional. These are young people that are not only just learning about how their body works, but how their mind works. And so you coaches, you work with them, you're watching to observe that. So how do you know when an athlete's emotionally ready to move up to the next level?
1 second. I'm going to give you an example. I don't know if it's going to make a lot of sense in English now, but in my head makes,
All right,
makes
try
sense.
it.
I'm going to try it. First of all, with emotional, you have to take a risk as a coach a little bit, understand? Because you have to test the athlete. Takes you a little time to know the athlete. You have to really pay attention to the athlete a lot, and you have to work with the athletes for a while to start knowing them emotionally. And it's not just going to happen. Someone comes to the team and you already know how she thinks, how she understand. It's going to take you a little bit, and it's going to take you situations, because you can have an athlete comes in the gym and she works very hard and she looks like she's not scared, but she does minimum difficult tricks. Like she competes, I don't know, level 3 or level 4. And then once of a sudden she has to go on the high bar and she has to do giants and she has to do a double layout of the bar. And now she gets scared, because you never saw that she's actually scared of heights, right? Because she never showed you before, because she was just on the low bar. Now, once of a sudden she goes to the high bar, things change. And the emotional start kicking in. And every time the level goes higher, the emotional change too. Then as a coach, you go with, but you have to pay attention all the time. And now I'm going to tell you this story. It's like this, I think, happened this week. We just posted a video. She posted a video on Instagram with 2 of my girls on beam. They did front to a cover. One girl was a little bit older. She practiced it before. But the youngest one that's in the video, she just joined the competitive team. She was in a recreational class. And she's going to compete Excel Silver, which she's going to compete a level higher than the first level to start competing. She never did a front to a cover. She just learned it on the floor. And we was playing, like I like to play with them sometimes with big tricks. I put them on the beam, on bars, and I say, let's do something just to boost their how to say it, confidence, right? Because they do a big trick. And I put her on the beam, and it was like 3 minutes, maybe less than 3 minutes. She did front to a cover by herself, first time, on a high beam with no mats, like competition beam. And then at the end, I asked her, and I always ask them when I do that with them. And like, if I told you in the beginning of practice when you walk in the gym that you're gonna do a front to a cover on the beam, what would you say? Like, are you crazy? Like, she will not believe it. I said, yes. Why? Because you couldn't believe that you're that good, that you can achieve that. But because I didn't told you and I just put you in that situation, I said, okay, let's do front to a cover. You didn't want to say no. Then you start doing it, and in less than 3 minutes, you got it by yourself. Understand? Because I didn't let her mind take control. I just guide her and make her feel confident that she can get it. I keep her excited, understand? And that little excitement that I give her, make her do it and achieve a trick that's actually pretty hard on beam.
And it's pretty scary.
Yes, and for someone who never did it, right? And everything that I did was psychological. Was nothing to do with it. Like, she knew it on the floor, obviously, right? But everything was here in her head. Like, all I did was to relax her mind and make her believe that, oh, I can get this and I'm safe, because I was spotting her. And I didn't let her fall, even though I would let her slowly by herself, and she will feel like, oh, I'm falling. I will always catch her, and she'll be like, okay, I'm not going to hit the beam and get injured. Then let's just focus. You see, we talked in the past when I said about fear, right? And now everything starts connecting. And I said that when you're afraid, you have to think about technique in gymnastics. You think about how to execute this trick, how to execute this routine. That's the most important to do, right? And that's what I told the girl on the beam too. I said, like, okay, focus on how to execute it. And you see, that's a learning mental process. You teach them how to use their mental strength in order for them to conquer a very emotional moment. Makes sense.
Yeah,
right?
it makes sense. And
I
a
explained it
lot
correct.
of
Did match with the subject?
a lot of what you're saying goes. I'm gonna go back to the original question after this, but because I have something to add. But a lot of what you just said has to do with what you said in the last episode, that it's really important for the child to learn to love a challenge.
Yes.
And sometimes the challenge isn't really physical, it's a mental challenge.
Most of the time it's actually
most of the time it is mental. And it has a lot to do with how you frame it to them as a parent and as a coach. As a coach, you were smart and knew that if you told her in the beginning of practice that she was going to do something which is above the level that she's in and she's never done before, it's a lot above the level. Even though she can physically do it perfectly on the floor, she's not done it on the beam, and that's a different ball game.
Yes.
So you knew that if you told her that from the beginning, she was going to dwell on that it's scary and the negatives and what could go wrong. And then instead, you put her in the situation where she just watched her other teammate that's a little bit older do it. And that sparked her intrigue, like, oh, what if I could do that one day? And then, hey, guess what? We're going to do it right now. And I'm going to hold you and you're not going to fall. Do you want to try it? And then it's like, oh, yeah, that's exciting. So you have to play, and you have to know, again, you have to know the child, because that worked for that child. Other children don't like that approach, and you need to realize that and you need to prepare them at the beginning of practice. Everybody's a little bit different. So that does come with time, like you were saying.
Yes.
And the opposite hand, when you're dealing with new students or very recreational students, like children that are brand new to the sport, it's really important to watch them and always use teachable moments for these mental tools. A lot of times they'll try something for the first time, and of course they don't get it right the first time they try it, and they're, oh, I can't do it. And then I always tell them, no, you can do it. You just didn't do it yet. It's coming. You're working at it. You're learning it. So you try to build them up this way emotionally. And then a good cue to know when they're ready emotionally to take on something, which would be like the next harder skill at the very beginner level, is seeing that they've grasped just that concept of, oh, I can do it. I just have to keep working at it. And part of that is, oh, I have to remember the correction my coach gave me so that I can make the skill come out the right way. So that's a good cue, coaching, and for parents when the child's brand new to the sport and they really are just learning their very, very first skills, is watching them take in the correction and remember to apply it. And then feel like, because they can't see their body when they're upside down, feel that they did the correction and be able to verbalize like, oh, that time I kept my legs straight. And then you can say, yeah, you did, great job. Now this time I want you to keep your legs straight and I want you to look at your hands, or whatever the next correction is. And then you know that they are mentally grasping what they're doing and they're ready for the next thing. And it will come out in their physical performance because they start executing the skills consistently the right way. They build the strength simultaneously. So they go hand in hand. And then they can, you can give them the next challenge when you see, okay, they're comfortable emotionally doing this trick. Let's try the next harder trick. And that's a great way for somebody who's brand new to the sport.
You see, she said that when the child says, I can do it, she tells them, no, you can't do it. You just didn't do it yet. Right? I blame her. When the child tells me I can't do it, I blame her. I tell them, like, look, she taught me English. They call her Miss Ashley. I say, Miss Ashley taught me English. And she forgot to teach me I can't.
Yeah.
Then when you say I can't, I don't know.
And
what
then
you're
I always
talking about.
tell her.
Let's try it. Let's go do it. I mean, let me help you. No, it's true. I actually use that.
Yeah, he does.
Sounds
And then
like
I
a
always
joke, but I
say
use
back
it.
like, oh yeah, you remember I
make it
told you
fun.
that. It's just short for I'm just still trying to do it the right way. I'm going to keep doing it until it comes out how I want. It's just the short version
Because you
of
see,
that.
in that moment, that child goes from a psychological block, right?
Mhm.
When they are like terrified of the trick to like fun.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, wait a second, this guy is hilarious. You know what I mean? Like, that's funny. And they forget about the whatever scares them to do that trick or whatever
it's
bothers
comedic
them
relief.
to, right? And then when I say, okay, let me help you, they take it to like relief. It's like, okay, let him help me, you know, because,
Right.
and they forget about whatever was bothering them.
Yeah.
It's very important to, how to say, to play with
Yes.
with them and know how to be a little funny, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And have a little like bring fun in, and give them the tools to understand that's normal to make mistakes.
Right.
It's humanly normal. We don't like it. It's not okay to be okay with a mistake, but it's normal to make it. We humans, we do that. We even the computer makes mistakes, understand? And then they have to feel okay with that. They cannot feel like a mistake is the end of the world. No, it's not. Like, as long as you didn't get injured, and that I say all the time, and that's why I tell all the time my students, I teach them, pay attention, take things serious, because you don't want to get injured. But if you did it wrong, you just fell off the beam, doesn't matter. Like, I coach you to be the best, but we go to a competition and your beam can be a perfect 10, but you fall off the beam 3 times, whatever reason is, like you got scared, you was like too, what's the word when you get like meltdown, like intimidated, you know, by that. It's a big competition in the big arena with like 5,000 people watching. It's very loud down on the floor and it's very intimidated, especially for a little kid to you sit on that floor and the audience goes up and you look at the people. Can be scary, can be very intimidating.
It's overwhelming.
And she falls 3 times off the beam, you know. It's not a big deal. Like, we're going to go back in training. We're going to work on that. And I'm going to pay attention to you as a coach. I'm not going to get upset. I'm not going to let, you see, go back to the ego. I'm not going to let my ego control my thinking process, because I'm going to forget. I'm not even forget. I'm not going to even know, why did you do that mistake? Like this, if I just pay attention to you and I just process exactly what you perform and why did you perform it that way, then I know how to help you. Then we go back in the gym and we fix the mistake. Can be an emotional mistake or can be a technical mistake, but I know exactly what to tune up.
Yeah.
Right. And everything is fine. Like, it's not the end of the world. You still have time to learn. Competing, it's a skill. And it's competing in life. Life is a competition. I told you before, right? And it is. You go to get a job, you compete with someone else on that job. You want to keep the job, you compete with someone else who wants your job. It's just how it is. You know, you go to college, you compete with someone else on the position to a scholarship. Like, life, it's a competition. You have to have that skill, but you have to teach that skill correctly. Because if someone doesn't compete well, a young, very young girl in gymnastics at 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old doesn't compete well, and you don't give her the right tools to learn how to compete and how to cope with not performing well, you break her. Understand? You're not going to help that person to become a strong adult. We talked about in the past about being a champion in life, right? She's not going to be a champion in life because she always going to be afraid of the competition. She always is going to be depressed on the situation when she's not going to perform well.
Yeah, well, that's what I like about your philosophy of coaching. It's you understand the person. You go out of your way to understand the person, what they're trying to do and become, a gymnast, etc. But you take it in the context of life, and even your gym is a culture. It's a culture where growth is continuous, which means you're always pushing your comfort zone. And you're always failing in that process, but you fail less and get better. And every day you should be at on the verge of something new. So your gym, you're really helping people to understand that they have to change and grow. So let's talk about that for a second. The idea of comfort zone. I can't imagine being in that comfort zone in your culture where I have to be my best and know I got to be better tomorrow. So you're always pushing people beyond their comfort zone. That's what growth is. So how do you do that correctly? And how do you find the balance between pushing them gently, nudging them, versus putting them into a comfort zone where they're not ready for it mentally, emotionally, physically, whatever? So
you do all this through discussions and teachable moments, and doing what Mihal said, remembering to look at the athlete first as a human and secondly as an athlete, and really looking deep into them and seeing where their mind is at. And by sparking moments of inspiration, like, oh, you did that so well, now try also this, and get them excited to learn to make corrections. Because like you pointed out a couple minutes ago and in prior episodes, corrections can be perceived as negative because you are pointing out what someone did wrong, but you're pointing that out to make them better at what they're doing. So if child can learn to be excited to get a correction, like, okay, what do I need to work on next? Because they want to get better, rather than, oh, you're going to tell me to keep my legs straight again. I'm so bad at this. That makes a huge difference in them wanting to take on more and to be pushed and to be accepting to be pushed beyond what's comfortable for them. They're going to want to step a little bit outside of their comfort zone automatically. And then you also teaching them that more is possible for them. They're learning without you really making it formal, that they can set a goal for the next bigger thing, because sometimes children are so young that it's very difficult to explain to them what a goal is and for them to fully grasp that. But you can do it by showing them, like, look what can come next. And then they get interested in what's coming next for them. And they take it like something exciting rather than something that is fearful for them to take on. And then it helps you move them along. But you do have to be really noticing the physical and the emotional all the time, every step along the way, as a coach and as a parent too. I'm going to let you add to this part.
I always tell my parents in the gym first, when I talk to them about moving up in levels and doing gymnastics at whatever level they want and how they want to do it, or doing hard tricks, I always say, like, look, before you throw your child in the ocean to swim with the sharks, you have to make sure that, first of all, they like the water. They are not scared of the water. Then you have to teach them how to swim. And then you put them in the ocean to swim with the sharks. Understand? You cannot just throw them in the water and be like, okay, go swim with the sharks. No, teach them to like the water, teach them to swim, and then bring them to the ocean. Put them in a small pool and then in a bigger one. And it's the same thing with gymnastics. You have to, as a coach, you have to really pay attention at your athletes. And you have to put them in programs that match them competitively, and not just technically, skills-wise, but psychological. Understand? Because they can be in a program where they can do the skill, but psychologically they don't match it. Understand? We have a kid that's pretty talented, but like I said before, scared of heights. Then she's going to have a little bit hard time to go to the high bar or even go on the beam and do crazy flips. She's going to need a little bit more time. Then you have to put her in a program that you can push her a little bit, but she can be also comfortable. Right. And she can have pretty decent and good competitive executions that you build her confidence. You don't break her confidence. Because I see this a lot, like, and especially here in the US, because gymnastics, it is a business in the end of the day. Like, people pay to do gymnastics and gyms make money with the athletes. It's not like in my country, my parents never pay for gymnastics, like it was governmental. Then gyms have the tendency to put a child in a program just because the parents pay. And I know people are going to get upset, but this is the truth. And they, especially the highest levels, like when you put a child in level 7, in level 8, in level 9, in level 10, that's a lot of money a month for a parent to pay. $400, $500, something like that. You put them to compete tops. You put them to compete. We talk about tops in the last program, talent opportunity programs, right? You put them to compete hopes. Same thing. That's an extra payment. and a parent goes to pay, I don't know, $800 to $1,000 a month at the gym. Then think about it. If you are at a gym and you have 10 kids competing hopes, you make $10,000 a month. Then now greed and ego and that kicks in because you put kids in that don't really belong there yet. You take the money, you take them to a competition, they come in last place. Now you don't help those kids, you break them. Understand? Right. Because they're not confident. They go there, they come in last place. You think they feel confident? No.
So it says this episode's called Red Flags. What are some of the red flags that a child is out of their comfort zone, beyond their current physical or mental capacity?
Sure. So it's some of the things that he started gently pointing out. If you're seeing a child going to competitions and before they even get there, they're very emotionally overwhelmed, it's normally a big red flag that they don't feel ready for what they're doing, because a little bit of butterflies and nerves is normal. But if it's like they have a stomach ache for a week before they get to competition, they don't feel ready for what they're doing.
And you have, one second, there you have to look a little bit why they are like that, because it can be just emotional, understand? Can be someone who's just very afraid of competition and then they are emotional. But also can be they do not have the skills to compete.
Right.
And then they are terrified of it. And you see that a lot. And that's why I said it's important for the parents to watch the practice, or if the gym doesn't let them watch the practice, they watch the competition. Then if you see your daughter on the beam warming up on level 7, her handsprings, she has to do a back walk over handspring step out. And she does a head spring step out on the beam, and she land almost crashing into the beam. And out of 2 warm-ups, she does 2 like that. Then obviously she's not ready. She's just not going to go up on the beam and suddenly do it perfect. Understand? She is technically behind the level. Then as a parent, you should approach the coach and be like, okay, let's talk a little bit about it, because I don't want my daughter to get injured. Right. And I don't want her to suffer emotionally, because that's why she suffered emotionally.
Right. And on the opposite half of that, it's very important that the parent listen to the coach about the speed they feel the child should be going, because it holds true that sometimes coaches feel pressured to move an athlete up because the parent wants them to be the next level. And as much as everybody wants to advance to a new level every single season, sometimes that's not the beneficial thing to do for an athlete, because it will overwhelm them physically or mentally. And if you just give them a little bit more room, they're going to just take off in no time if you allow them the growth. So looking at having emotions of overwhelmment, having performance that looks to be unsafe to even the untrained eye, those are really, really big red flags with sirens. Because look, the child is overwhelmed.
It's one thing for you to do a mistake, technical mistake. You go to competition, you go up on the bars. For example, in level 7, you have to do a cap cast handstand, it's called, then you do giants. And you go in competition and you got a little bit stressed out, and the god goes, does cap cast and kick the cast a little too hard and fold on the other side of the bar. It's an emotional technical mistake that you can see okay, if she actually focused, she can control it. But it's another thing when you see that physical struggle, she barely can cap, she barely can catch, she doesn't keep her arms straight.
The form is bad.
Understand? Or they don't have the requirements, and you see it, and it's sad because you see it that I watch hopes, because I want to see who's the best in the country, who's coming, the youngest, because those are the 11 years old, and that's what interests me a lot. And I see girls there that I'm like, why they are competing? You know, it's so dangerous. The way they execute the tricks is so dangerous. And some of them barely have the requirements, or they, what's the word when they put a trick that's easier than...
They replace a hard trick with an easier trick, but it's not really what should be at that level. And it's if you're not able to fulfill a pretty decent amount of difficulty, then you're too overwhelmed by the difficulty. You need to take a little bit more time to acquire the skills, and there's nothing wrong with that. Because you never want to send a child into competition where they feel like, I don't belong here because I don't have enough skill, or I don't belong here because I could have hurt myself.
Understand?
Right.
That's when you break them emotionally, and they don't come back from that. It's very hard to come back from an emotional breakdown. When an athlete lose their confidence, They don't look, and you see it in sports all the time. You see big champions in boxing.
Mm-hmm.
They get knocked out one time, and after that they cannot fight
Mm-hmm.
because they break down. Understand? Like emotionally, they are not that unbeatable person anymore.
Right.
And you took from them that how to call it? What will be a word? Like their power, kind of.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's the same thing for those young athletes. Like you have to keep their emotion strong. You have to keep them confident. You have to build confidence, even if though they do wrong. I understand, like even if they go to a competition and they have a bad execution, but they feel like, oh,
They feel like it was an accident.
if I
not like they
if
can't
I go back
handle
in
it.
training and I'm gonna train a little more, I'm gonna focus more on my correction and I'm gonna make it. Like they have to go with that feeling. They have to be able to take that feeling out of the mistake. But if the mistake is so bad, the execution is so wrong that they cannot see that they can make it better, then don't do it. Don't put them in a level where they're gonna struggle. I'm gonna give you an example. I go to competition and I have a very young girl. She was competing level 7 and she was warming up on beam, and that's real. And the girl that she was in a group with, she was like 9, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the other girls, they was like 13, 14, maybe 15 years old. And my girl goes on beam with handspring step out done perfectly. And these older girls, like the coach was not spotting them, they will do like it's called like a tic-tac with a handspring step out.
Mm-hmm.
But like I got scared, Mark. Like I turned my girl away the other side, my little girl. I turned her and I was like, oh, let's look this way. I make it funny, not for her to now realize
gave
that
her
I
something
did.
else to
Yes,
do.
to now realize that I don't want her to look at the girls. But I got scared.
Mm.
I was like, if that girl goes one more time, I'm like, she's gonna break her neck.
Mm-hmm.
And the coach was just sitting there like,
You see it
once
a
again,
lot.
you can see that the coach was used to her execution. And I was getting upset about it because I'm like, you know she's not ready. Because I'm scared, and I did crazy tricks in gymnastics as a gymnast, and I did crazy tricks with my athletes. Like I have 11 years old back in Romania doing a run that handspring triple flip on floor, and I spot her, boom, boom, boom. Run that handspring double layout to the double twist. Like I did crazy tricks with boys, Kovacs on high bar, spotting them, big boys. Like I did crazy stuff. Like I'm not scared of it, if I put it that way. But looking at those girls, I was terrified for them. And the coach was fine.
Mm-hmm.
The coach was watching it. And you see, like if I take you to competitions that are a little bit higher level, like level 7, 8, 9, 10, and a little bit higher, like hopes,
Right.
you are going to see those executions that I'm talking about. And those are the red flags. If a parent sees his daughter or his son in that situation, you should go talk to the coach and be like, okay, let's try to put her in a level where she can be comfortable, safe, and gets confident. Like, you know what I mean? Builds confidence. Don't build, what's the missing confidence?
Self-doubt.
Self-doubt. Yes. Sorry.
Well, but your whole idea of illuminating champions is that continuous process of growth and development of physical, emotional maturity and confidence. It can be destroyed if you push it too fast, or they have an accident and they get this fearful monster inside of them that won't let them proceed. So it's a thin
that's
line.
really hard to overcome, that monster that you just described it as. That is exactly how it feels. And it's a terrible, terrible feeling. So you never want to put someone in a situation where they feel like they're just not good enough, because they really truly are too overwhelmed with what they're doing. And as Michal said, you do see it the most in upper level competition, because and that's where it's most dangerous, because the skills are harder, they are more risky, and it's very, very apparent. Like you either need to take out difficulty and put a replacement skill because you're unable to do a normal requirement, not above average requirement, just a regular, normal requirement for that level, or you attempt the normal requirement and it is apparent to anyone watching that you could really hurt yourself on it from the way that it's being executed. So that's a major, major red flag. And then when that starts happening, of course, the child starts getting that monster inside them where they're having a negative self-talk. They're probably regressing in their performance because they don't feel like they're good.
Probably for sure.
And
that's why they regress.
And then they do less and less and less, and they start getting mental blocks because, you know, sometimes mental blocks seem like they come out of nowhere, but if you really pay attention, most of the time you can see where they're coming from. And in girls gymnastics, most of the time girls get mental blocks on beam, and a lot of the time the truth is that it's because they are not just mentally not ready for this skill, they're mentally not ready for it because they're physically not ready for it, and then they're trying to force themselves to throw it because it's required in a certain level, and they're putting their body in a dangerous position, and they're smart, they know that, and then it's like a defense mechanism, like I don't want to do this. And you see it a lot when the child is overwhelmed with the level. So that's why it's so important to watch them and gauge their physical readiness and their mental readiness.
And for the parents to be honest student with the level of their child. That's why I said in the past, the parent has to parent the athlete child without the ego too.
Right.
Look, I'm going to give you a story. Like a year ago or something like that, I had a girl, she came to my gym. She was 9 years old. And when the mother calls, she wants to train for hops, which is the pre-elite qualification program, start at 11 years old.
It's like girls at 11 years old are watching, are competing tricks that you can watch and see in the Olympics. Like that's how hard it is.
Level,
it's
right?
almost at that level.
And she came to my gym to test her, right? And then she had to compete. She didn't compete level 4. She had to compete level 4. Now think about hops is like level 10 and above, right? This little girl, she was, and I told the mother, she's talented, like physically she could do it, but she doesn't have the skills, the technicality. She doesn't have the skills requirements for level 4 yet. And the mother told me, like, you know, the gym where she's at now, they told me they are training her for hops. And I said, no, right? She didn't stay, right? But I told Ashley, I hope the mother didn't understand the gym, but I hope the gym is not lying to the mother. Understand? Also. Because I'm like, that girl was nowhere close. Like, I will never tell her, like, yeah, she's going to train for hops. And she was good. She was talented. I'll be like, okay, let's train her. Let's get her ready a little bit for level 4, 5, 6, 7. Right. And then from there, you know, we can have hops in the
proper place.
Yeah, but not now. You see, gyms do that because it's money.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to make a lot of.
Let's talk about this. You know, you have such a challenge to take these young people through an amazing growth process, and again, I'm such a fan of how you love these people and nurture them and care for them. So, you know, how do you go about influencing this mindset of continuous growth, which means a lot of failure, a lot of learning, a lot of thinking about what did I do wrong? Why was I thinking like that? So how do you develop this mindset that allow these athletes to want to take on more continuously in the right way, this champion mindset? What, got any tricks or tips for people?
Yeah, definitely. This goes back to what we were talking about before, which is always pointing out what they did well, because that stimulates them to want to do even better and feel good about themselves and focus on the good. And a great thing that parents can do at home when they're talking to their child about how practice went is start off with the positive. What was your favorite part of practice today? Depending on how old they are, you have to frame it a little bit differently. But what was your favorite thing you did today? What did you do well today? Is there something you really improved on? And get their mindset on this place of positivity. And then you can start discussing, okay, well, is there anything you'd like to work on to do better next practice? And that's a great way to have them learn how to self-reflect at home, but come from a place of positivity and really emphasize the positive. And for kids that really struggle to do that, if they're going through like a fear or something that they're really, really struggling with, sometimes it helps for them to also even write it down, like list out, I did this, this, and this well, or if it's a specific skill that is a huge struggle for them, they should be able to identify like, okay, this time I was able to keep my arms straight 3 out of 10 times. Next time I'm going to do it 4 times, and start focusing on what they did well and what they've improved on their way to their large goal. And goal setting is a gigantic tool to help a child learn that they can always grow and they're capable of more, and it helps them feel that they're unstoppable. And you want them to feel like that all the time, because like you said, it is a continual challenge and it is continual failed attempts on your way to
you're
getting
gonna
it
fail
right.
more than you're gonna
You are.
execute correct. By the time
Mhm.
everybody fails.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody struggle. Do you think like the Olympic champions, they just walk in the gym and they don't struggle? No, they struggle. And some of them in the beginning of their career, maybe they look like the worst gymnast ever. They look like they're
True.
not gonna even make it. But they work very hard, and we talk about discipline. They have that discipline that push, like give them the tool to work very hard, and they are persistent and consistent.
Yeah.
And then one day they become Olympic champion. The Olympic champion is not always the most talented athlete in the Olympic Games. He's the harder worker, the most disciplined one, and the harder worker. It's very rare when there's that natural talent that I told you in the past, that God gives us one talent that we have, like one quality that we're really very good at it, but sometimes we don't discover it in the whole entire life. It's like a secret quality. Like Michael Phelps, for example, in my opinion, that guy, his talent was swimming, and somehow his parents put him in the right sport,
Right.
and he became the most awarded Olympic medalist in the history of Olympics. But he also worked hard.
Yeah, and it's good to point out to kids that even their idols have bad days, or they fall down, or even now with technology and social media, you can find videos of people who they look up to when they were younger, and it's good for them to see, like, look, they were struggling just like you, because kids think that their idol, whoever they idolize, is like, it's like Superman. They never make any mistake, they never fall, they nothing's ever hard for them. And that's something to point out, even in practice as a coach, especially with very new athletes. That's something I always end up saying, because kids so easily get discouraged, especially now with so much technology. They are used to instant gratification, and they're used to not having things be like very, very personal to them with video games and iPads and things like that. It's different to really have to work very hard in real life to attain what you want. It's not a game, it's personal. You feel it, and you do struggle. And that's a rare concept in their lives in this day and age. So it's a great opportunity to help them realize that struggle is normal, and look at all you're capable of, and look at how hard you're working. And as long as you tried the very hardest you could to do it the right way, you're doing great, and everything else will improve with practice.
And you have to teach them to like the outcome of the hard work they put in. Understand? Because let's be honest. Even Michael Phelps, we talk about him, or Simone Biles, or nobody's going to tell you, I love doing conditioning training, for example, in sports. All the athletes, they have that part of the training. Beside the technicality and the sport, they have to do conditioning training. Nobody loves that. Nobody goes in the gym, is like, hey, coach, make me do 1,000 push-ups today. You know what I mean? But they do it. Why they do it? Because they like the outcome. They know they get stronger. They know they get better. They know they're going to perform well in competition. They're going to be a state champion, regional champion, national champion, world champion, Olympic champion. Understand? And then if you focus on the outcome of your work, you are going to do that hard work. You are going to go to that hard times, difficult times, right? You're going to go through the fear too. If it's scary, you're going to fight it, because you want to achieve that goal. Understand?
Right. So becoming a champion is a process.
It's a very psychological process, with a technical part, obviously, from each sport. But it's like, look, I'm gonna say this. I'm trying to say it correct in English. At the Olympics, most of the individual sports are 8 finalists in the final, right? 8 people compete for the gold medal, right? In most of the individual sports, from swimming to running to gymnastics to just not the combat sports. But anyways, there are 8. All those 8 athletes are almost athletically identical, as good athletically, as natural talented as one another. The one that wins the gold medal is the one with a stronger, not this. I should correct? Not this, yes, not this. This.
Mind.
With a stronger mind. The stronger muscle, and I tell my girls in the gym all the time, the stronger muscle in our body are not those guys.
Your
these
muscles.
guys, right? It's this guy.
Your mind.
Understand? That's what makes the Olympic champions. The guy that win the Olympics, the gold medal, the world record, the Olympic record, is the guy with the stronger mind in that final. Is the one that in that moment, the most stressful moment, the 9.85 seconds running 100 meters, whatever the world record is, I may be wrong. But think about it, it's 9 seconds. You have to run the faster out of everybody.
Right.
Do you know how stressful that is? Your muscle doesn't twitch correctly. Your knee, if your knee a little bit wiggle, you're gonna run 11 seconds. Like, you have to be so focused. The guy with a stronger mind is the one that's gonna win.
Right.
Then that's
what always gets me is the gold medalist might be 9.82, and the bronze medalist is 9.81 or something. You know, it's so close. It's so close on some of these things. It's just a sliver of perfection difference.
Gymnastics used to be like that when was it a 10th? Yeah. Like, I remember my friend I talked to you about last time, I said about him, Marius Surzica, in 2000 at the Olympics was like that in the final. And I was like, man, how did you go to that pressure? Like, it was like so much. Like, I watch you on TV, and it was like, I was like, oh my God, this was tense, right? He's like, you know, I don't even remember. I was just going through the routine in my head. All I remember is at the end of the routine, I did. Yes, that's all I remember. But he got in that mental focus,
right?
Where he hear nothing, see nothing, just the power horse and his routine. Understand? And he won. He became Olympic champion. And before the Olympics, that's a real story. He was stressed out, like stressed out. And then when I saw him on TV, I was like, I hope he stays calm. You know, like, well, it was funny to watch him. But same thing. He got from being scared, and obviously he's human. He had emotion, right? Doubting a little bit. He got to the point where he focused so well that he beat those guys by the split over 10.
Right.
You know,
that's the mindset.
Yes, but that's why I said the Olympic champion is made by the mindset. You know, and that he was like that all the time. Like, he always was like that. Like he beat me on power horse at the national finals just because of that. Like, he will go and he will perform the routine perfect. I will be like, this guy is unbeatable. Like, I can't beat him. You know, and then I will make a mistake just because I will think how good he execute the routine. You know, like, he will put so much pressure on you psychologically before you even compete. You know, even though you had the skills to compete with him, but he will compete so clean and so good and so confident that you'll be like, okay, he's unhuman, you know. And those are the people who wins in life too. Look at even like people with business, with millionaires. They are there. They are confident people. They are not people that are afraid of investments. They are not, right? You see someone who has $100,000 sitting in the bank account, and that's all their money. And someone else, you look at, what's this guy named Cuban? He has that.
Mark Cuban?
Yes, Mark Cuban, right? That guy was like working for I don't know who, like driving a car there, bringing mail over there, selling magazines over there, make $1,000 here, $2,000 there, then invest the money here, then lose money here. Like, he took chances, right? And he was confident. Now he's a multi-billionaire. Yeah. It's that attitude of like, you know, I'm going to take the risk. I'm going to lose. I'm going to win, but I'm going to do what I have to do in order for me to achieve my goal. I'm not going to give up.
That goes back to the theme of our episode of being ready and being able to identify when you're ready to take a risk. And in the life of a child, they have the advantage of being surrounded by adults who can help guide them, such as coaches and their parents, help identify when they're ready for more by sparking that growth mindset, by promoting positive self-talk, and by noticing from the outside that they're physically ready for more. And I think that that's a great way to wrap up today's episode.
And don't do it with ego, because when you don't coach with ego, when you don't parent the athlete with the ego and your child with ego, then you can do everything that she said, because then you stay out of what that child can do. Understand? And then you don't hurt their emotions because you have no ego. You're just gonna do good.
Right.
Make sense? Because like, if I don't coach with ego, I'm looking at your ego. I'm looking at your desire to be good. I'm looking at you 100%. And then I can judge correctly. I don't judge based on my ego that I want to win. I want to make an Olympic champion. Yes, I do.
Right.
I'm not going to lie, but I'm not going to force you to do something that you're not ready for. Right. It's not winning a gold medal at all costs. And I think that's a good title for the next episode. And we're going to wrap it up here. And next episode is going to be not winning a gold medal at all costs. Because that's a very good discussion, Sway.
Right.
Thank you so much, Mark. And thank you, everybody.
Hey, thank you. I enjoyed it. Thanks.
Thank you again.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for listening to Illuminating Champions. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and stay tuned for our next episode.